It has wiped off almost 294 billion of the market value. So you can imagine how much people have lost, how much investors have lost right now in the stock market. And that makes you be more careful. You have to know why you're investing in stocks. And like I said, the time horizon that you have for you to invest in stocks. So just recently, the CDSC came up with this maintenance fee idea of 100 shillings a month. This is just crazy. And today, therefore, I'm going to look at some of the things that make trading stocks or just buying stocks or benefiting from stocks very difficult for small investors in Kenya. And they haven't made it easy all along. This is not just the problem we are having in terms of making money with stocks in Kenya, but there are many other issues. But I was just so surprised that the government could actually think of, because this is the part of the government, they could actually think of charging people at the worst time possible based on the living standards and what's happening in the economy, to start charging those who are trying so much to invest. First of all, to try and invest is difficult in itself. Getting that extra money that you can then put into the market and get something out of it is difficult. It's a difficult process because life standards are quite high. Everything is going up. Everything is expensive. Fuel has been crazy with the economic turmoil, with the war in Ukraine, and with the inflation that is now rocking the world, and with stock sell-off that's happening lately. This is just not the right time for the government to introduce such a thing, and therefore I thought it wise to talk a bit about this issue that the government is trying to do. CDSC account is what you need to invest in stocks. So if you want to buy stocks, you must have a CDSC account. Now, it means if they're going to be charging you for some maintenance fee on this account, then it's going to affect your returns on that particular account. I saw what my brother posted, Pevio Uko, in his blog, Afrimanomics. If you want to read more on economics and stuff, check him out. But he said that if you invest 20,000 and assuming a return of 10%, that means you'll be getting 2,000 that particular year, right? That is both capital gains on that asset that you have and the dividends you will have gotten. 10% out of that, then the government wants to charge you 1,200. So 10% would just be 2,000. Government takes 1,200, you're left with 800. Makes no sense at all. So if you think about it, it's basically killing small investors at the worst time possible. So I thought, why not let's look at other things that actually make investing in stocks or trading in stocks in Kenya quite difficult for just a normal investor, everyday person trying to make some money. So just to say, for what it's worth, right now the government rescinded that decision, I think based on the outcry by the public. Despite them rescinding that decision, number one, they didn't say that they won't charge it. They have said that they have taken time off for consultation and then people will be advised on the way forward. We know very well how the government does things. If they decide to bring it forward, they will bring it forward at some point. And this is something that people have to resist by all means. You cannot be charged maintenance fee on an account. Funny enough, most people who have the CDSC account are not even active just because of the same processes that we have with regards to trading stocks. Trading stocks or buying stocks has always been left for the rich people in Kenya. So now that everything's been made and the systems are being opened to normal people to buy, to easily access these stocks, they're coming up with other charges. All along, people have been trading stocks, buying stocks in Kenya, the rich people, and they have never been really punished with certain fees. Now when normal people are starting to get financially literate, starting to buy stocks, invest here and there, now they want to charge. Why? Because more people are coming into the market. When fewer people, rich people, were in the market, they never really cared about getting some money out of it. And that shows you how much the government doesn't care, or these government departments don't really care for the common people. And that's one thing we always have to know. If you're an investor, this is the time that your voice has to be heard. We cannot allow them to come and just levy some fees on these accounts. It affects us big time. So you want to make sure you reduce your fees as much as possible. So this issue that came up made me realize, okay, why don't we look at other fees that CDSC charges that people actually haven't spoken about? And are you aware as an account holder that you are being charged those fees? Here at Kensmoneymatters talk about the money mindset, how to make that money, how to enjoy that money, how to manage that money, how to invest that money, and how to assure yourself of a lifetime of income. Basically, financial freedom. So let's look at different things that make it a bit difficult in Kenya to trade stocks or benefit from stocks. Number one is that interference. and that has always been an issue. The fact that you must actually have a CDSC account for you to trade stocks, I find that to be bogus. I do not see the need of having a centralized place or a centralized account that any person who wants to trade in those stocks must have. So that's already a way in which they are trying to regulate the system, and that can be a bit scary for some investors, because if it's an open market, then I believe that we should have a very open system whereby brokers have ways in which they access the live feeds from NSE, and then they feed those things directly to the investor, and you can easily buy and sell these things without the need of having a CDSC account. I don't see the need for that. The other thing that makes it very difficult to trade stocks in Kenya is the fact that stocks are continuously on the red most of the time in Kenya. And people trade with a lot of insider information in Kenya. We still have a system whereby you need to know what is happening in the company. You need to know what the stakeholders are doing. You need to know what the management is doing for you to be able to actually get some money out of it. That's why you find most people who have made good money out of stocks are people who have some knowledge about that company. There are people who have some deep interest in the company. There are people who have some deep connection with ownership of the company. And this is why small investors have not made like really good money unless they do it for a very long time and they pick the right companies. So of course, if you watch Kensmoneymatters, you will pick the right companies. But most of the time you find that there's still a lot of insider information when it comes to trading in Kenya. And that has really interfered with how people are making money in NSE. So most people who are small-time traders do not have enough information for them to make decisions on what companies they want to buy. However much we try to help, there's still a lot of influence from other factors that are not either technical, not fundamental, really, but they're just more of interests that influence the stocks. And that makes it very difficult to profit from stocks as a level of corruption, I would say. The other reason I could say is the fees that people are paying. Now, when you're using the CDSC account, you pay a lot of fees. Of course, you're paying the broker some fees, but let's look at the fees that are levied on just CDSC account. So for example, I came to a CDSC account, just look at some of the fees that people are charged. And if you look at this one, you will see we have different services that are offered by CDSC and the charges in Kenyan shillings. So there's a transaction levy of 0.08% of the equity turnover. That is something that most people might not know, but you do pay it. Anytime you have a transaction, you are paying it. A depository levy, subject to a minimum of 50,000 and a maximum of 1 million. 90 per transaction. That's a depository levy. So basically, when you deposit any money, a minimum of 50,000 and a maximum of 1 million per annum. Most people, most small-time traders will fall within that. Now, if you look at the bonds transaction levy, which I don't really recommend right now. First of all, CDSC still don't have the bonds directly from here. That's something they're currently working on, but you still don't have to buy bonds here. You can basically buy bonds straight from central bank, so you can avoid that. CDF fees, that's different. Okay, if you do security transfers, you're paying 200 per transfer for own accounts, 1,000 per transfer for nominee accounts. Private transfers, this is also here. So these are some of the charges that we have in CDSC and people might actually not know. So if you want to settle an estate of a deceased person, you see how much they will be charging you. Less than 10,000 is no charge. Greater than 10,000, the 45% of 1,500. Again, look at that. Transfer by gifts depends again on how much you are trying to transfer. So interim statement, if you want a statement of your own CDSC account, you see how much you're paying. Pledges and releases, again, you're paying. Withdrawal, 500 per account. These are things that people may not know. Corporate action postage fee, I think you can easily avoid that, and that's not really important. Guarantee fund administration, that's a different one. So basically, there are a lot of fees that you can still end up paying in CDSC account, and you must know how to avoid them. How do you avoid them? When you're using your broker, get to know what services they're offering and the fee they're charging, what that covers. It's very important. Get to know what your broker is charging you for and what they cover. Okay, and ask them questions. Ask questions about the fees that you're paying. So that's just to give you an overview of some of the fees that you pay. So fees are very important when you're trading stocks. If you want to make money in stocks, make sure you're not paying too much fees. All those small percentages do add up and become a lot of money. So make sure you know what fee are you paying for, what is your broker helping you pay for, or are they, basically charging you an amount and then they cover that for you. So you get to know all these things if you're using a broker. Then finally, is just volatility. Stocks in Kenya are quite volatile. The reason being, most of our stocks are still dependent on a lot of things that are happening to individuals. So you find that however much international stocks are also linked to some individuals, in Kenya we still have companies strictly and deeply linked to certain individuals, so and certain currencies within the system. So those ones make it so volatile to benefit from stocks in Kenya. So these are things you always want to take into consideration. If you are buying a particular company, what's the time duration that you have to buy that company? What makes you interested in that particular company, and what kind of growth do you foresee for that company? And this would help you gauge if it's a good idea for you. But generally speaking, these are some of the reasons why people are losing money in the stock market. Lack of information, or of course, people don't have any information about these companies. People don't have any knowledge about the companies they are buying or what they're investing in. People are impatient, they want to make quick money, and so many other reasons. But on the side of the government, they have faulted in terms of helping people, helping small traders become better. So I'm happy that they have now stopped this idea of levying some more fee every year or every month on traders. But let's hope that this one doesn't happen again anytime soon. Make sure you know what you're doing anytime you start investing in stocks. Don't get into stock for the sake of getting into stocks. There are many investments, and I've said them in this channel, that you can get into without actually burning your feet. Right now, as we speak, stocks are at all-time low, 20-month low. It has wiped off almost 294 billion of the market value. So you can imagine how much people have lost, how much investors have lost right now in the stock market. And that makes you be more careful. You have to know why you're investing in stocks. And like I said, the time horizon that you have for you to invest in stocks. Just when I was doing my research, I saw that we have over 1.64 million CDSC accounts. Out of 1.64 million CDSC accounts that we have currently, 1.2 million are dormant. Leaves you with something like 3 to 400,000 that are actually active. Out of the active ones, you can imagine how many are for small-time traders and just a few maybe for big-time traders. That means people are scared of stocks in Kenya. That means people don't think they can make money in Kenya. And it's because of things like what the government just did that makes people be fearful of stock investment and trading in Kenya. So now you know why people don't make a lot of money, and you have other options always. Remember, Kensmoneymatters can always guide you on the best investment options you can go for that can give you guaranteed returns and more conservative. Of course, there is always a risk. You could get more reasonable risk somewhere and still make money. Thank you, and I hope that's helpful in terms of investing in stocks. Now you can make your decisions differently. Until next time, Kensmoneymatters